I want to get my joy back. I'm happy here, off the court.
Can you get your joy back here on the court?
Probably not.
Thank you, Jimmy.
It is rare for an NBA player to be able to match and replicate the identity and the culture of the team that they are on. But for Jimmy Butler, that seemed to be just the case, fitting in well with Miami Heat's culture of hard work and determination. But as has become very clear by recent events, that relationship has soured, perhaps beyond repair. Welcome back to State B Association. I'm your host, Nash Roberts, and today we're talking about the fractured relationship between Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat. Now, to start off for Jimmy Butler's career, he has often overachieved everywhere he's gone. In Chicago, he started off not really getting many opportunities, but as the years went on, he became a very solid player for them, especially in an era where it was becoming clear that as a result of the injuries, Derrick Rose couldn't be the guy anymore, and Butler kind of stepped up. And then later on in his career, there were some stops in between that we'll get to in a second, but later on in his career when he goes to Miami, most people thought that it was kind of a rental, that this wasn't going to be a guy that was going to be there long term, maybe just there for a year, and that they're really not going to do much as a team together. And they end up making the finals not just once but twice under Jimmy Butler. So while there is that overachievement factor to wherever Jimmy Butler goes, there's also definitely a chip on his shoulder, which in some circumstances it drives him to be an even better player. But in other cases, it can lead to him burning bridges pretty much everywhere he goes, with ugly exits from Minnesota especially coming to mind. Now, Jimmy Butler, when he was a Minnesota Timberwolf, there's the famed story of him taking the team's third stringers to a victory over the first team in a scrimmage to just kind of show the determination that Jimmy has, but guys like Cat and Wiggins on that team were severely lacking. And Jimmy Butler hated that they were lacking that, and he felt like they did not have the drive that he did. There is a fire inside of Jimmy Butler to compete and be the best. That is a great thing that can really have him kick his game into a new gear, into a high gear, and be the best player that he possibly can be. But at times, that can create friction between him and the coaching staff as well as ownership. And that's what we're really seeing in Miami here, where we have seen both the best and now perhaps the worst of the Jimmy Butler experiment in what he can bring to a team in his entirety, both good and bad. Because this Miami Heat roster, on paper, isn't uber talented, but it is a roster he has taken to the finals twice and been the de facto leader of for many years now. When he originally came in, he wasn't expected to be that whatsoever, but he has led his team to higher places than they ever thought that they would be under Jimmy Butler. But at the same time, they were still missing the biggest, most important piece to an NBA legacy, and that is, of course, an NBA championship. And they got close, making the finals on multiple occasions. Jimmy Butler having incredible performances to get them there. And back in 2020, even having a great finals performance. But they just couldn't get over the hump. Even though Jimmy Butler was the clear leader on this team, and he said that fire that he has in his heart to compete, he instilled that on every player on this roster. And it seemed like a perfect fit for the Miami Heat because you come to this team and they expect you to work hard like no other organization. They believe in hard work over talent every day of the week. And on paper, Jimmy Butler is a perfect fit for that, and in many ways he was. But in getting so close to an NBA championship and just not being able to get over the hump, that likely took a toll on Jimmy Butler. And now this team in this regular season does not look anything like a championship caliber team. And that's also definitely playing a role on Jimmy Butler, because he said in that interview where he talked about there was no possibility of him getting his joy back in Miami, what that was referencing was he wants to go out there and be able to win games for his team. And if that comes in playing a role, so be it. But he feels like the roster around him is not good enough to win the biggest prize possible in the NBA title. And that's all Jimmy wants to do. He has done all he can for this team. He has overachieved so much for them in moments where they were expected to do anything. They go on great playoff runs led by incredible performances from Jimmy Butler. But they were never able to get over the hump. And there is a very big possibility that took a major toll on Jimmy Butler and how he views the franchise and that culture. Because the Miami Heat also kind of failed to build around Jimmy to the best that they could have. Bam Adebayo is a great player. Tyler Hero can be streaky, but he's a very solid guard in himself. But of course, the top two players on your team are Jimmy and Bam. And outside of that, Tyler's pretty solid, and you have a lot of role players. Oftentimes, role players that might have been undrafted, and they overperform so often. That is a testament to Heat culture and how they believe that hard work beats talent. But this is the NBA, where the most talented players in the entire world play basketball. And this team just needs a little bit more talent to be injected into it. And in years prior, they were really in the talks for guys like Damian Lillard or even Donovan Mitchell. But that never ended up panning out. And oftentimes it was kind of seen as the Heat were not offering good enough packages for these players relative to their value. And they really could have used a score-first guard. That would have really elevated this team to the next level. But they never got it. And they trusted in Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo to be the leaders on an under-talented team that works very hard, but player to player, they don't have a lot of depth compared to other teams. The ninth best player in the Miami Heat might be interchangeable with the fifth best player on the Heat. But in terms of the magnitude of that depth, in terms of if this ninth best player is going to be the ninth best player on a different team, probably not. And they work hard and overperform because of Heat culture. But at the end of the day, they relied a little bit too much on that and the leadership of Jimmy Butler to win a title, and it burnt Jimmy out. Now he feels that he can't win with this team in its current state, and he doesn't want to be a part of their operations anymore. No side is completely in the right, no side is completely in the wrong, but there is undoubtedly a fractured relationship between Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat front office. He's burnt out with the team, he just wants to win, and he feels like he can't do that in Miami. Now what's going to happen to Butler, only time will tell, because really the teams are going to have a lot of cap space. Our teams are not going to win much either, like Washington, Utah, Brooklyn. But he's made it clear he doesn't want to be in Miami either. And what my main point in all of this is, it really takes a toll on the psychology of a player when you do all that you can to elevate this team and be a leader, and you just can't get over the hump. Because Jimmy Butler is a major, major competitor. And he wants to win on the biggest stage. And he has gotten this team so close to the NBA Finals twice. But they've never been able to get over the hump. And he hasn't been able to lead them there. And the team consistently trusted him to lead this team to overachieving. But Butler just wants to win and wants to be in the best situation to win. And he feels like Miami isn't the place. His competitive fire that served Miami so well for so long has led him to see that he is not going to be able to take this team to a championship and that he needs to go elsewhere in his mind. That 2020 run especially, he was working so hard, especially in the finals, but he couldn't get them over the edge. And that definitely takes a toll on your psychology. If I was to guess, I think that's really the main reason behind the fracturing of the relationship is Jimmy's competitive fire, not being able to get this team over the hump, and the Miami Heat kind of failing to build, at least, make one more really talented addition to the roster to really elevate this team to the next level. They never did that. They trusted Jimmy's leadership, but ultimately, his competitive spirit wants him to be in a position where he is better suited to actually be able to win, and he views that as not being Miami. He lost his joy for the game because of that. And statistically, he's having one of his worst seasons in recent memory, and that's no surprise. He stated himself that he has lost that joy, and he's okay to play within a role if the Miami Heat are going to win, but they're not looking like they're going to be a contender anytime soon. But so as a result, Butler is burnt out, and Butler just wants to be happy playing basketball again and playing for a team that he feels like he can really win on and still be a leader, still have that competitive fire, but actually have it go somewhere. And it was a fun run in Miami for Jimmy Butler. There are so many great moments, but at the end of the day, he wasn't able to capture the biggest thing, that NBA championship. And that seems to have really taken a toll on him, especially now, taking a reflection on the roster and seeing that this is not a championship caliber team in his eyes. And that is why Jimmy Butler wants out of Miami, because of the psychological tolls that it has taken on him to get this team so close, but yet so far. And that competitive fire has always been on display, and he wants it to continue to be on display, but this time with a team where he really has a chance of winning the finals trophy. Pat Riley, meanwhile, doesn't really budge. As a president of operations in Miami, he is known as someone who doesn't budge to star players. And these are two guys with very strong personalities, very strong leaders, and ultimately it wasn't able to merge successfully on the biggest stage. And they couldn't see eye to eye in the end, and now Jimmy Butler is going to be on his way out of Miami, perhaps sooner rather than later. It was a fun time, but Butler wants to win now, especially being at the age of 35. There's not a lot of time left, and he wants to make most of it. You can't fault him for that, and you can't fault him for all the times and experiences that he did have with Miami, all the great moments. But at the end of the day, he is a competitor to the fullest, and he wants to win. And that is elsewhere for Jimmy Butler. That is all for today's episode of State of the Association. Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Nash Roberts.